leverage with liquidity and safety. In this episode, we're going to address the question, how can I get greater returns on my rental properties? So hang on, you're going to be blown away with opportunities that you didn't know existed, and why most people that own rental properties are missing out on a fortune. So I'm Doug Andrew, and what do I know? Well, I wouldn't say that I'm a huge real estate investor, but having said that, I probably own more real estate than most Americans do. And the reason I don't own a lot of rental properties is I just don't like the headaches of being a landlord, taking out the trash, evicting tenants, and fixing toilets and so forth. And yes, I know I could hire property managers and so forth. But let me tell you what I do with mine, and I have a lot of clients who are multimillionaires and billionaires who will agree with these three strategies on how you can optimize your rates of return on your real estate properties if you have some that are non-owner occupied rental income real estate properties, maybe rental homes, duplexes, or whatever. So get ready. Here is number one. You need to increase the liquidity, safety, and rate of return on the real estate equity. How do you do that? The rental property is going to go up or down in value regardless of how much equity is in the property. If it's mortgaged to the hilt or free and clear, it has nothing to do. See, the rate of return on real estate equity is always the same, zero. We have this misconception that because the property appreciates or the debt reduces, that equity has a rate of return. No, equity doesn't have a rate of return. The house or the property will go up in value or down in value, whether it's got a ton of equity or very little equity. It has nothing to do with the amount of equity in it. When you separate the equity to give it a better liquidity and safety, now you can increase the rate of return. So this is why on all of my rental properties, I keep the equity separated. I will borrow 80, 90, even 100% on a first, second, third mortgage. I keep as much equity separated from my properties as possible. I refinance them every 2, 3, 4, 5 years as is feasible. And where do I put the equity? I put it over here in this pocket, so to speak. Now, my favorite vehicle that passes the liquidity, safety, and rate of return test with flying colors that the property does not is what I call the laser fund. It's a maximum funded insurance contract, and it's way safer than in the property. So I'll give you an example here. When I separate the equity and I have it over here, let's say $1 million. If I have $1 million over here, it is protected from the market downturn. So if my properties go down in value, for example, my house in 2008 went down in value from $1.5 million to $1.1 million. I didn't lose $400,000. My house went down in value, but if I had had the equity in my house, I would have lost $400,000 for several years until it came back up to $1.5 million. No, I actually had my house mortgaged to the hilt with a first, second, and third mortgage. And I had that money over here earning a rate of return of at least double the cost of the mortgage. It was safe. I did not lose. And a lot of people go, oh, you're underwater, Mr. Andrew. You owe more on your house than it's worth. And I go, I'm in control. So my money over here has been earning, let's say 8%. It was actually earning 10. At 8% compounding tax-free. So let's say it's $1 million. I have $1 million over here earning 8%. That's 80 grand. If I have $1 million mortgage on the property and I'm borrowing at 4.5% tax deductible interest, which you can do on Schedule E or your LLC, whatever you own the property in, if you do it right. If I borrow at 4.5 and I'm in a 33% tax bracket, it's only costing me a net of 3. So every million I'm paying 30 grand a year of interest, but interest is my friend, not my foe. This is why banks pay interest, to make more interest. So they borrow our money at 1% and they make 5%. I'm borrowing money at a net cost of 3. When I borrow For mortgages at 3% tax deductible, it's a net cost of 2. So if my net cost is 2 or 3%, on $1 million, that's 20 or 30 grand. Over here, I'm earning 80, 90, 100,000. How much more is 90,000 than 30,000? Don't say 60,000. It's 300% more. See, on top of whatever my house or my rental property is doing, I'm making 300% on the equity regardless of whatever happens to the property, because it will go up or down in value, has nothing to do with what my money is doing over here. This money here is compounding, tax-free. The money in the property, okay, I'm paying simple interest tax deductible compared to compound interest tax-free. So this is how you become your own banker. You ready for the second and third reason why and how you can protect yourself and multiply the rate of return on your rental properties? Watch. So in order to increase my return dramatically on my real estate, I not only have the properties, rent them out, and if you don't like to be a landlord like I don't, you can get a good property management firm. But there's a lot more to take into consideration than just the cash flow from a piece of real estate. So let me make sure you're clear that I keep my real estate equity separated from the actual property, because it's going to go up or down in value regardless of whether it has equity or it's free and clear, or whether it's mortgaged to the hilt. If I have the money over here. Now, that's called leverage. Leverage, though, without liquidity is stupidity. People get into trouble when they buy multiple properties and they're leveraged to the hilt and they don't have any liquidity. This is where a lot of people, like Dave Ramsey, admits that he got way over leveraged because he didn't have any liquidity. So when the real estate went down in value, everything imploded because he didn't have the cash, because he kept tying it up in equity in additional properties. No, I use OPM. I always mortgage the properties. If I have to pay a down payment, I'll pay the least amount down, but I have actually never paid a down payment for any property I've acquired. I've satisfied down payments, but not with my money. I keep my money over here liquid and safe in case I need the money. I can access it with an electronic funds transfer or a phone call. I don't have to borrow it back out again, because I learned when you need the money the worst, it's the hardest to get. They're not going to loan you money if you don't have the ability to repay. So the equity in the property is useless to me if I can't get to it. If it's over in my laser fund, I can access it anytime I want. So liquidity and then safety. If the house or property goes down in value, if my money's over here and it's protected from the market volatility, which my laser fund is, I am safe. I do not lose. Now, here's the third consideration. There's many people that I've helped dramatically increase their rate of return on their rental properties by repositioning those properties, or borrowing on them and acquiring additional properties for the reason I just told you. But here's an example. There was a couple I met down in Palo Alto, California, and they had purchased this home for like $230,000, a 5-bedroom home years ago, and raised their 6 kids in it. So we fast forward to 35, 40 years, and that house is worth $4.8 million. Now, only in the Bay Area do you see a 5-bedroom home worth $4.8 million. Well, they were renting the home for $10,000 a month, and then they increased it to $12,000 a month. And they're like, "Oh, look at us. We're getting $12,000 a month rent." Now, let me just tell you, that's pretty pathetic. If you do the math, they were only getting about a 2% annual rate of return on that $4.8 million asset. I said, hey, why don't you either sell this house and do a 1031 exchange into other properties in far better rent multiplier cities, or else I'll show you how you can just sell the house, pay the capital gain, put that equity into a portfolio of laser funds, and you'll generate about $250,000 a year of tax-free income out of lazy idle equity that was trapped in that house, earning you a pathetic 2%. They went, wow. So let's use the 1031 example. This couple was able to take the equity by selling the home, and doing a tax-free exchange into over 20 homes in Memphis, Tennessee. Now they have newer properties. The homes in Memphis have a 1% per month rent multiplier. What does that mean? A 5-bedroom home in Memphis is worth about $300,000, not $4.8 million, but it rents for 1% of that a month, or $3,000 a month. In other words, the house in Palo Alto, if it's really worth $4.8 million, should have been renting for $48,000 a month. Hello? If it's not really worth $4.8 million. Something's wrong there. So they were able to diversify into over actually 20 homes and then rent it out at 1% a month. After the property management, they don't have to be a landlord. They were netting 10%. They 5 times their cash flow on those 20 homes. They went from getting $10,000 or $12,000 a month up to $60,000 a month in rental income. Now, other people like that, we have actually had them just pay the capital gain. In that example, we could have taken the capital gain tax and still netted $2.8 million out of selling $4.8 million. Take the $2.8 million, that was after buying another home for $600,000, which was twice the size of the one they sold. They retired and moved to Utah. Well, the $2.8 million in a portfolio of laser funds is generating over $200,000 a year of tax-free retirement income. It's now up to $250,000. This is out of lazy idle equity that was earning Zippo in the property. It was giving them rental income, but only at 2%. Now we're up to 10% tax-free. We do this all the time. So what are the great takeaways here? If you want to increase the return on your rental properties, don't just rely on the property to appreciate in value and have rental income cash flow. I would recommend you keep your equity separated in a position of liquidity, safety, earning predictable rates of return that are generally 200 to 300% greater than the actual net cost of the interest on the mortgage. You're able to protect yourself so when the property value goes down, you don't lose. And the third consideration is to look at maybe increasing the rent multiplier from a measly 1 or 2 or 3% up to maybe 10 to 12%, where you can be getting up to 1% of the value of the property in rental cash flow. Even after property management fees, many people are netting 8 to 10%. We have done this for hundreds of clients and referred them to specialists in this area. If this is intriguing you, click on this episode, watch it, get a copy of my book, Laser Fund, thelaserfund.com. I'll send it out to you. I'll pay for the book. You pay $5.95 shipping and handling. And you'll see why the Laser Fund is used by many, many real estate investors to increase the liquidity, safety, and rate of return on their rental properties.